Good evening. I'm glad you've decided to join me for How It Works, Libby, Overdrive, and the ebook industry. So I'm Zander Miller. I'm the digital strategy librarian with Kenosha Public Library. And one of the things that I do is I am the one responsible for purchasing books for Overdrive or Libby. Now, there's a relationship between them because I say Overdrive and Libby interchangeably because Overdrive is the company. So Overdrive, the company, are the ones we talk to. They're the vendors in the industry we talk to. They've been expanding as a whole in library world. And so I think of them a lot as contacting Overdrive or working with Overdrive. Libby is the name of the app that Overdrive has created for people to actually look at their books and read their books. Now, of course, there is a website for us as Wisconsin that this is, the website URL is wplc.overdrive.com, and that's part of where you see the Overdrive part, but you can see they really want people to use the app even on this page. So, as we are here, I have a question. I have a note for you. A lot of the industry side of what I'll be talking about today comes from this report, the Anti-Ownership Ebook Economy: How Publishers and Platforms Reshape the Way We Read in the Digital Age. Now, this report is like 58 pages long. I have a singular printed copy there, just for reference, but the QR code that is on the paper versions there and the link here do go to a link of the PDF, the full PDF of this report. I have read this entire report. I find it riveting as someone in the industry with ebooks, but this is a lot of that info comes from this in particular. Most everything else just comes from me and working at the library. I've worked here for 5 years now. I've worked with Overdrive for probably like 4 of those 5 years with purchasing those books. So I wanted to establish that. Before we get into Overdrive and Libby, there's some things we have to establish about how ebooks work. So I have a question for you. What are ebooks? Electronic books. Okay. And we're gonna just say ebooks, but when we say ebooks for the presentation, I'm also talking about e-audio books, e-magazines, most all digital content that we provide on a checkout basis, similar to like any of these physical books. I have a follow-up question for you. Do any of you own an ebook? Like, have you bought an ebook from a store? I saw one, head nods. Anyone else? Okay. All right. The one, I'm happy we have at least one, because I have bad news for our one. Unfortunately, we don't really own most ebooks. Okay, you know. Okay, good. Which is weird. It sounds weird because I get a question a lot that they're digital. Why can't we just have them? Like, I could give more copies of a digital thing, similar to like any other like file sharing. So if you have like a music file as an MP3 file, you could quite literally make a copy of that file and send it to someone else in an email, and they can read it. And there are some ebooks that you can do that with. There is a file type that ends in EPUB, and you can share EPUB files and read them on a multitude of devices and in programs. But for books that are not just Libby and Overdrive, but say Kindle books as well, that doesn't work that way. So to kind of understand why we're actually going to talk about physical books. So have any of you had a book and you'd like wanted to like sell that book or like you're trying to get rid of it somehow and you give it away to someone, or you have a garage sale and you're like selling it for like 50 cents, something like that? Okay. Yeah. So understanding why you can do that. There's a thing called the first sale doctrine. Has anyone heard that before? Okay. So when it comes to physical items or materials, the publisher or the owner, the original owner or creator, once that has been sold, the rule of the first sale doctrine basically says whether it's through a sale, donation, or throwing in the trash, that publisher has no claim of control over that copy of what you have gotten from them. Instead, whoever's gotten possession of it, lawful possession of that copy, has all of the incidents of ownership that comes with any other form of personal property. So you walk into Barnes & Noble, you buy the book, $20, however, you get it, you read it, you don't like it, you want to resell it for $10 at a garage sale, or you bring it to the library to donate for free. You can do that, and the publisher has no claim to anything that you do with that book afterwards. So that is, in general, how garage sales actually function for like a lot of the things you have. So tools that you've bought, reselling selling a used car. A lot of how we function with physical objects works through this first sale doctrine. Publishers don't like that. So book publishers in particular really don't like that. In fact, they've never liked that. They lose control over what's called the secondary market for reselling things, particularly books in their case. Fortunately, for us as consumers, there is the case that actually established the first sale doctrine happened in 1908 in particular. The case was called Bobbs Merrill Company versus Strauss, 210 U.S. 339, 341, legal reference. But what happened is Bob Merrill and Company. Jason, could you grab hit a few lights over there? I just want to get a good view of this. Yeah, go ahead. And then we'll try hitting the lights, just so we can get a good look at this. Yeah, try that. Perfect. So what this is, it was printed in one of their books, and it says the price of this book at retail is $1. No dealer is licensed to sell it at less price, and a sale at less price will be treated as an infringement of the copyright. So they were trying to keep the cost of this book at $1 no matter what. No matter who has it, if it was giving away or sale, it has to be $1 or it's a copyright infringement. Yeah, they lost that legal case, and this established the first sale doctrine. And for like over 100 years, publishers have tried to fight this, and they have lost. This got to Supreme Court level. There have been multiple decisions that have reestablished or reinforced the first sale doctrine on physical ownership of things. So
that must have made them crazy with Amazon.
Oh, we're gonna get there. You have made a good prediction. Publishers don't want that to repeat. So when electronic things and files started coming around, and actually I'm not going to talk a lot about the music industry today, but the document I got a lot, they talk about the music industry and pirating and LimeWire, the craziness of LimeWire in the early 2000s for pirating music. It's a great report for like book nerds. So they didn't want that to happen. And so when ebooks started becoming a thing, they wanted to make a system that makes it so that they have control over those ebooks or e-material as a whole. And make sure this never happens. And so what's came through that are two things. Firstly is the licensing content and digital ways to ensure that they retain control over that digital material. And that has a term. You may have heard this in the news, actually. It's called digital rights management, or DRM. So this is where we get into if you've purchased content. Because to know if you have, even if you've gone on, and I'm going to use Amazon a lot for these examples for ebook purposes. If you've gone on Amazon and you go and it says, buy this ebook, $10.99, and you can read it on your Kindle. You actually have to look at the terms of service for Amazon to kind of understand what's going on with you buying that book. Because we think of buying, you buy it, you own it a lot of the time. So let's first look at licensing and access. So this is on Amazon as a whole's general terms of service. I'm going to kind of read part of that to you. This is under the section for license and access in Amazon's terms of service. Subject to your compliance with these conditions of use and any service terms and your payment of any applicable fees, Amazon or its content providers grant you a limited, non-exclusive, non-transferable, non-sublicensable license to access and make personal, non-commercial use of the Amazon services. So in general, your use of any Amazon services, that is a license that is exclusive between you and Amazon for non-commercial use. So that's the first part. Under the account section, it says, you may need your own Amazon account to use certain Amazon services. And Amazon reserves the right to refuse service, terminate accounts, terminate your rights to use Amazon services, remove or edit content, or cancel orders in its sole discretion. So this part is the part that gets librarians very upset, is that for any of their services, Amazon retains the right in its own sole discretion to just remove your access to them for whatever reason at all. They also can just edit it. So something that has happened with some ebooks is that someone doesn't like a particular part of it, or the publishers didn't like it, or the author is like, oh wait, they'll go back and then change that part for everybody, and then no one gets a notice of it. So they just change the content within the book, and everyone gets that content, and that old content just doesn't exist anymore.
You bought it 2 years ago.
Yep. So, and they could just remove it at that point, because it is only Amazon. Now, this is all under their general terms of use, which you could think of as their whole website, products and services that Amazon sells. But when we talk about Kindle in particular with Amazon, we need to look at that particular terms of service. It's a whole separate one for Kindle. And the most, this is where we see things like DRM, or digital rights management, show up. So I'm going to go to the next part. And this is in the Kindle TOS. Kindle content is licensed, not sold, to you by the content provider. So there's a license for anything Kindle related. You don't own it. You're getting licensed access to content, which is a whole different thing. So if you've paid $10.99, you don't actually own that book. Despite you could have gone to a bookstore and got that book for $10.99, and you have that physical book, and the first sale doctrine says you are now the only person who can control what happens with that book. You own it. If someone steals it from you and takes it from you, that is theft. Now, what the publishers and the providers have done is they've made it so they're not actually selling the book to you, they're selling you access to the book. And they can take that access away or change the book without permission, basically. And when you go back to the first part of that TOS, or the second part I talked about, they can just terminate your account or terminate access to, say, a Kindle service. And now those books that you have purchased on Kindle, because it's licensed and because Amazon has cut off service with you, those books are gone. Now, there is another part in here that I haven't talked about yet, is that in this TOS, it also says use that all of this stuff can be used solely through Kindle software. And this limits how you can actually see that content. So I mentioned before EPUB as a file type that you can share. A lot of Amazon Kindles, everything shared digitally has some form of file that goes with it that you can move around to different places. It fills up your Kindle, and then you meet with me to help manage your device storage at some point. There are files for this content, but in those files, they have proprietary software that can tell how you're trying to open it. And if you're not opening it through Kindle software or on a Kindle device, it will not work. It'll say this file type cannot be read by something that I can read an EPUB document. It won't work for a Kindle file type. So it can only be read by a Kindle, and it is tied to your account that you have, that they could eliminate at any point. So you're limited by the device that you can use to access that content. You don't own the content. They can change the content at any time they want or remove it, or if Amazon decides they don't like you for some reason, they just completely remove you from the equation, and you lose all the content you have purchased. So
I'm glad I never bought it.
this is like the entire point of this program, is I finally get to talk about this. So why does this matter for Overdrive? So we got to Amazon, and I'm not a fan of Amazon, how that works. And we're going to bully Amazon because Amazon is the biggest distributor of ebook content. Why does this matter for Overdrive? This is a natural question because we're talking about licensing, we're talking about content, we're talking about access, and just like, the worst case scenario with Kindle, say they completely shut down, you lose all that, you don't keep books you have on Libby or Overdrive. They're checkouts. But this looks, for you, the way you see it, you get to go into here, you find a book, you check it out, you return it, works fine. You hit borrow, and you're good. This looks very different for me. So we have to think of this because we are also licensing those getting licenses to that content. So your part where you are caring about the license and how you access it, that part's removed, but now we, the library, are working on that part. Because there are really, when we're talking about all of these things, there are 3 things we need to think about. And Amazon's also, again, going to make a good example. There are 3 tiers. There is the publisher. So we've talked about the publishers. So that could be like Simon & Schuster, Penguin Random House. Again, I'm using Amazon as my example. But this could be anybody. And their goal is to sell books and make a profit. That's at the end of the day, that's what the publisher wants to do. Now, this is different. We have to think about the platform. Now, part of why I'm using Amazon is because Amazon works as both a publisher and a platform. So they have so much control because they are both of these. When they're thinking of Kindle or Audible, they are the publisher, they are the platform, they set all of the rules for that stuff. A lot of the time, that's not how that works because you have a company like Overdrive who works as a platform and creates Libby for the users. And so Overdrive is negotiating with the publisher to reach the library as the third tier. So there's three parts. Publisher, they got the book, they're selling the book. The platform, Overdrive, presents something that we can access and buy into in one place. And then there's the library, where we are the ones purchasing the content available for our patrons. Whew. And Overdrive themselves are very aware of this. So this is actually an infographic from Overdrive as a helpful way to explain how this works. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the publisher is the one deciding the lending terms for digital books and prices. We're going to talk about the lending options in a bit. Overdrive, they're the ones who work with the publishers and then also work with the libraries. So when we get books from in Overdrive, we don't talk with the publishers at all. We have to check mark that we agree to their terms, and we purchase through Overdrive, who then money gets back to the publishers. There's probably a cut for Overdrive in there. And then we get to the library, me, who purchased the books, to get to you. So 3 steps, 3 people, 3 groups involved, unless it's Amazon, in which it's just Amazon. There's a whole thing with Amazon giving access to ebooks to libraries. There's a whole bit of legislation on not getting that options. I'll talk about it at the end if we have time. But that is how that kind of area works. Now, there are 3 lending terms that are really important to talk about when it comes to us buying books. And remember, the publisher is setting these terms. So, one of these is the typical setup that you think of physical books. They're called one checkout, one user. And so we buy a copy, one person can check it out at a time and use it. And we keep that for however long that Overdrive exists as a company, platform. That's how that one works. I like that one. Pretty neat. We buy it, we keep it, and provide access to everyone for however long we keep using the platform. That sounds simple, but there's more. So, there is a pay-per-use model where each time someone checks out a book, it costs the library a set fee that has been agreed upon by us providing access to it. So that can range, I've seen a range of like $1 to like $9.95 for the per checkout. So we'll see more, and I'll show you in the platform as well on my end. And the last set of models are all in the tier of metered access. So some books will be limited by the length of time that we have access to it. So when we buy it, we're buying it and we keep that one copy for 12 months or 24 months, depending on which we want for that type of book. And it's metered by that. There's also metered access by checkout. So we buy a copy and we only keep it for 26 checkouts. And then if we want more checkouts, we have to rebuy it. Same thing with the access, the other version. At the end of that time frame, we have to rebuy a copy if we want to retain access to that book. And the last area of metered access is a metered access with concurrent usage. So each of those other models that I mentioned, the price per use model, as many people as they want can check out as many at a time with that model. With the one checkout, one user, and the metered access models that I've talked about so far, those are one person at a time per copy. So if I wanted 3 people to read a book that has that metered access by 12 months, I have to buy 3 different copies of that book at that one price, so 3 people could read it at a time.
This is very expensive for the library.
Well, that is the next slide. So, the other one is that concurrent use, metered access concurrent use. Usually that is 100 copies that can be used by as many people at a time, but you only have 100 copies. And once it's done, it's there. There's a very established return on investment for that, which can be useful, might not be. So let's look at pricing for libraries. This is where the problem starts. Because the pricing and the licensing is set by the publisher, okay? So, Demon Copperhead, have we heard of Demon Copperhead, the book?
I know Barbara Kingsolver.
Yeah, Demon Copperhead, Pulitzer Prize winner, winner of the Women's Prize for Fiction, well-established book, well-established author now. This is for the audiobook. So this is directly from the publisher. HarperCollins is the publisher. For an individual to buy a digital audiobook themselves. Now, it's a license, most likely. I haven't read HarperCollins' terms of use, but because it's a digital file, it might be a license, it might not. Depends. I haven't read HarperCollins' terms of use. We'd have to read that to figure that out, which I read terms of use for my job. I don't know if the average consumer reads the terms of use for every purchase they make. So $44.99 for that. This is what that looks like for me. So it's one copy, one user. You can see that by the OCOU. I'm actually going to walk a little bit. So OCOU is one copy, one user. The price on here for one copy is $133.23 each book we buy. So if I want more than one person to read it, I have to pay that price twice at the same time. We have bought 2 copies of this book. So we've paid, and I refuse to buy more for multiple reasons. And this is the holds. This line here is the holds that Kenosha County Library has. So that is this line. This that says consortium is the rest of the state's holds. And the rest of the state has 1,220 holds. Now, I haven't explained this part of how this works, and I'll explain it here since this is a convenient spot. So, our Overdrive access is something that everyone in this state has access to. There's a group called the Wisconsin Public Library Consortium that has set a deal with Overdrive that we are purchasing copies that then can be shared between all of the libraries across the state of Wisconsin. They actually have a public website about WPLC that is saying what it is and their projects. And there's also, I believe, I made sure that they updated it to have me as a selector. But they have a variety of committees that are dedicated to just working to get access to this stuff for our state. So that is part of why when we go to Wisconsin, this is called Wisconsin's Digital Library because we have had this agreement with Overdrive. So when we are looking at this, we can see the difference because when I buy things, they prioritize our patrons. So these 2 copies will go for these 16 people first. By the way, this is an older screenshot. That has actually gone higher because there are usually multiple models to purchase things from. So in this case, there is a cost per checkout model for this audiobook, which is actually significantly cheaper than this price. And so that's how I got this number down, because it was at like 30. And then we had per checkout costs, that is like $2 per checkout, significantly cheaper than this. I have no idea why they organized it that way. I don't question it because it's beneficial to me, but oh well. So yeah, there's quite a discrepancy price-wise. That is almost 3 times more expensive for the library to buy it than for an individual to buy it. And that is a pretty consistent 3 times as much as a pretty consistent number with how much more expensive buying books as the library is than buying for an individual, or at least for ebooks particularly. So how about the ebook itself? So directly from the publisher, the ebook would cost $17, $16.99. And the physical book costs $26. Now, this is weird. This is one of the weirdest things to me. The publisher selling the ebook costs less than the publisher selling the hardcover. Does anyone have any ideas why that would be the case?
Now, is this the instance where you wouldn't be able to keep the electronic copy then also?
No, this would be the way a lot of the times for individual customers, it works kind of like in the OCOU, or that one checkout, one user. It's like if you bought a book off of Amazon directly, you get that file for however long Amazon is around. At least that's how it's worked so far. I'm not aware of an instance where Amazon has like revoked access and you can't read any of the books. But they can. That's the problem. So this, you'd keep that. And the hardcover is $26. So, yeah, this is weird because for the library, we often, when we come and purchase physical books, we can go through the publisher website or we can go through our separate set of vendors. We actually usually get a discount on the physical books instead of the ebooks because the ebook for this costs $44 for us. And we can get the physical book for usually cheaper than the market rate, actually. Now, to me, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But I also want to keep providing access to books as part of my job. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. This is metered access. So this is what that looks like on my end. It says the metered access, 26 checkouts. So this could check out 26 times before I have to buy another copy. And only one user can read that one copy at a time. So at the time I took this screenshot, we had purchased 3 copies of this one book. And so 3 people could read it at a time. And each of those copies costs this amount. It's a lot. This can explain a little bit. Have you all ever had books that you've been waiting on for like 6 months?
Several weeks, yeah.
Yeah. This is part of why. Because I have a limited budget. That is still, over the year, a lot higher than the other librarians overall. So if I have $2,500 a month to spend, I have to think, what ratio can I spend at? I'm often thinking of purchasing at ratios that have a particular wait time. When I started purchasing things in 2020, aside from the massive influx we got from grants for COVID-related things, because we got a whole bunch of money from the state and the feds to purchase ebooks and e-audio at the time because people were not going to places physically. Oh gosh, I spent more money than I've ever spent at one time. Oh man, that was at least an 8-hour day just doing that. I get $2,500 a month. When I started, I was thinking, okay, 7-to-1 ratio was good. That is about, I want to say, it'll tell you that it'll be about, I want to say 12 weeks, but it's usually faster because people return things before they're actually due. At this point in time, I'm happy if I can get 9-to-1 ratio. And each of those, that difference is like 3 or 4 weeks of wait time, basically, in reality versus what that actually is.
So what is 9 to 1?
9-to-1, if everything is a 21-day checkout, and actually let me do that math real quick. So if it is at 9-to-1 and it's a 21-day checkout, and everyone in front of you keeps it for 21 days, okay? That would be, I've got a calculator pulled up on my screen. So 9 times, so that would, oh gosh, I did 9 times 2, not 9 times 21. That would be 189 days if everyone kept it for the full 21 days. And luckily,
Get the book.
for you to get that book, yes. So, and that is only if we are the ones that purchase it. If we are not the ones that purchase that book, and say you're the only person in Kenosha County that has a hold on that book, and say someone in Eau Claire puts a hold and Eau Claire buys that book, that person's going to be ahead of you because Eau Claire prioritizes Eau Claire patrons. So it takes a lot of time, and I thank all of you who return your books early because that helps everybody. And I get to tell patrons often that the wait time you see is shorter than the wait time that is in reality. That also means you will get 4 books off hold at the same time. And I am sorry that happens, but that is inevitable with how this system works. So really, this is the pain point. There's a discrepancy in how much things cost versus the models available to us. And both of those points are set by the publishers. Overdrive's the intermediary that is providing the content, and last time I talked with them at a conference, they're like trying to negotiate the best deals for libraries out there. All of that middleman, Overdrive, Hoopla, they all say the same thing, and I have price checked them on that point, and they have the same prices between Overdrive and Hoopla. So we can actually take a look. This is what that marketplace looks like for me. So you've only seen so far what that one book looks like. I want to show you what the holds list looks like because that is how I actually make a lot of decisions on purchasing. So no information that is like individuals' information is even viewable from here, so I'm not worried navigating this. But I'm going to look at current holds. And like this is live, by the way. This is not part of the PowerPoint. This is actually where I go to purchase things. So this is like the one time you'll be able to see this, unless I run the program again. So right now it's running a report on current holds. And it's a big report because it's loading the entire state. Me and like 20 other librarians are the ones that purchase things for Overdrive for the entire state. It's quite interesting. I'm glad it loaded. Sometimes it doesn't. Right now, everything is out of order. I'm actually going to put the owned column next to the holds column here. And now I'm going to sort descending by holds, which will show the most popular books by how many people placed on holds. We're going to have a good time with this one. And yes, it takes this long every time. So this is a bit of part of my life. Right?
Drink your coffee.
All right, so there's the book, The Woman, super popular right now. Do any of you have that one on hold if you're comfortable? All right, so The Woman, audiobook. There are 73 holds. We've already purchased 10 copies of this one. All right, so I'm going to open this, and let's take a deeper look at this book. It is Kristen Hanna. Anyone read Kristen Hanna before?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Hear about this book.
Yes, Kristen Hanna. She's on my Overdrive naughty list because every time she has a book, it gets like this. So every copy that we buy, it's of this audiobook. It's OCOU. So yay, we keep the copy that we buy. It works just like the books in the building. But it's $60 per copy. So you see this is at 73 holds right now. In March I was looking at it, and there were 98 holds on it in March. I look in April, and at that time I'm actually working on a predictive spreadsheet so I could predict how much it would cost if we purchased a certain ratio of holds. And I looked at the April one. That's if And I'm like, that's weird. I bought so that we had 10 copies. Usually when I do that, the holds go down. April, the holds went up to 109. And I literally went into my boss's office like, I don't know, I can't buy more copies of this book because 10 copies already, 10 times $60, that's already $600 on one book with a budget of $2,500, which also means that we can't buy other books, which is the dilemma of this industry for libraries right now.
Do you only buy the digital books, or do you buy hardbound?
We buy hardcover as well. So
Do you do that, or?
I don't do that. A separate person does that. And we do talk to each other because we like seeing the discrepancy between what we see with holds list. For example, James Patterson, super popular. We always get a bunch of his physical books. Not as popular in Overdrive. He doesn't bother me as much as, say, Kristen Hanna does, at least in Overdrive. But the wait list, if you've waited for a physical book by James Patterson, is very long if you try to get a physical book. So we do both, like we don't reference each other's holds list, but if something is going up for one of us, we like informing each other because usually it means it's going up for them too. Kristen Hanna's The Woman and Britney Spears' The Woman in Me both surprised us, especially The Woman in Me because there wasn't as much hype before it was published. And then she says some things about Justin Timberlake, and then everyone wants to read it. But even across the state, there are 50 other copies that the consortium has bought as well. So this problem here is not just us either. Libraries across the country are facing issues when it comes to ebook prices, as well as the access model. Because if this was a metered access by 24 months, this would be a massive problem because in 2 years, there might be a movie made based on this. And if a movie comes out and you've run out of that time of access and then people want to read the book again, we have to buy those copies. Lessons in Chemistry is one of those that had that problem. Handmaid's Tale's had that problem. If something comes up in pop culture, it changes the holds ratio, and depending on that model, we may not have that book anymore. Killers of the Flower Moon, yes, that one had that problem as well.
Most of the things we've seen so far have been fiction.
Yes.
Is it the same problem with nonfiction that you face with fiction?
It depends on how popular that is. So I'll pull up this one. This is nonfiction, The Anxious Generation, How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. Yep. So this is nonfiction, $85.50 for an OCOU, or we could pay $42.75 for an access to one we keep for 12 months. Which is a problem because we'll be able to buy more of that access. But we won't be able to have it after, say, if this gets popular again in a year from now, we'll have to rebuy them. And the publisher set those terms. And you can see there are 27, we'll go through this. We'll go through this hold list, most likely. And at the end of the day, when we look at the ROI of some of these, so the return on investment, then it looks okay. It'll come down to, in this case, we've had 5 copies check out, and it's only been 4 months since it released. So, it doesn't look good now, but in a year from now, that ROI is going to look a lot better. But it's a struggle for the time we are purchasing these. Crazy Rich Asians. That is available now. May as well, since I brought that up. Just do a quick search. I say quick. Oh yeah, there is a search thing with Overdrive that makes no sense to me. When it does a keyword, it doesn't like prioritize it as titles. It just prioritizes differently.
Using Overdrive and not Libby.
This is the Overdrive marketplace. So this is what I see on my end when I'm purchasing. But that book is available now, but that's because there are 27 copies bought by the consortium. We actually don't have any copies that we ourselves bought, but because we have that connection with the rest of the state, there are copies available for us. Now, if it did get popular, I would likely buy copies. But you can even see, even without us having copies, we've had 29 checkouts in our county. So right now, that's doing good for that title. Other titles look different. So it's really on a title-by-title basis because it's really by each publisher. So Random House or Penguin Random House, as well as Books on Tape, are the ones that are the publisher of the audiobook, and it's just Penguin Random House for the ebook. I am keeping track of publishers nowadays. I'm just like, who's got these ridiculous terms and who doesn't? But if it's a popular book, I'm going to buy access to it. It's just how much access that means and what can't I get because I am prioritizing, what everyone wants to read at that moment. Okay. We've got 13 minutes to ask questions about how all this works and more about Overdrive and Libby and ebooks as a whole. I see a lot of you look a lot more concerned than you did walking in. So
I didn't expect that you would have to pay so much for the ebook. I feel bad for every time I just downloaded something
I will say,
that I didn't read.
for Overdrive in particular, don't worry about that. None of this is meant to like burden you as an individual. So
Taxpayers, so
yeah. The issue here really lies with the publishers because I'll tell you the results of that spreadsheet I made, that predictive spreadsheet. So we made it so we could figure out, how much money would we have to throw to get our holds ratio down. And I will say the state as a whole is trying to get the statewide wait time, the average for that, down to like 40 days. They're trying to, I think, reduce it by like a quarter. Right now, it's at the average wait time is about 70, 72 days to get your book. They're trying to reduce that by a quarter. Where was I going with that? Oh yeah, trying to get it down. So when it comes to the physical books, we do purchase lease copies for physical books when people want a ton of them. So we'll purchase physical books to a 5-to-1 ratio. So 5 books. There are 5 holds. We buy 1 book per hold to keep. Now this is funny because we lease books temporarily and we give them back for when the demand goes, but we keep a few copies that we purchase just for the library, which is very similar to how this works, but it's a lot cheaper to do that, and we actually get points with the publishers that we can then go back to get more books and buy more books that way. It's a whole different industry, physical books versus ebooks.
So is anything happening, so like for instance, I'll go into Libby, I'll request a book,
Mm-hmm.
then I'll say I want to read it on my Kindle.
Mm-hmm.
So I read it on my Kindle, but then my Amazon account pops up and then I click that, yes, I'm going to upload. Is something going on? What's going on there?
Amazon doesn't like this. And Amazon and Overdrive don't get along very well. Because Amazon doesn't want Overdrive taking a bite out of their ebook industry. So a lot of things that are normally, okay, so let me start here. Normally, you would not be able to like read a Kindle book on Libby, right? Like if it's just you buy it from there, you're not able to use Libby as an e-reader. In order to get you an Amazon file, they make you go to Amazon because Overdrive doesn't have access to that file type whatsoever. They only have the access to Overdrive, what they use for digital rights management, that lets you read it on the Libby app. So they send you over to Libby.
Metrics, right? It's still part of.
It does still count as a checkout because you do check it out in Libby and then it takes you to Amazon so that you can get it.
Yeah.
So it still counts for us. So don't feel bad about doing that.
Yeah.
It's just Amazon and Overdrive, it's weird file and digital rights management shenanigans between them.
Yeah, and I noticed that not every book that I download from Libby can be read on a Kindle.
Yes.
So there's that piece too.
Indeed, yes. And that is all publisher and platform relationships. That part I don't have any access in other than I can potentially only buy things that have Kindle access, but that would take away some books that just don't have that. The holds ratio. So physical books, we will purchase lease copies that we return to get it to a 5-to-1 ratio for that time period. Those lease copies go back and we get points for when those goes back so we can buy more books. So 5-to-1 is what I wanted to see. And my spreadsheet made it so that I could see if we bought from 5-to-1 to anything greater than 5, so 6-to-1, 7-to-1, how much it would cost for that month if we purchased at that ratio. I had to learn how to do that. It was pretty fun. It was fun learning how to do that. The 5-to-1, and actually I'm going to pull it up just to make sure I am saying the right number. I'm not going to pull it up here, but I'm going to pull it up over on my screen here. So let's see if I can find that.
And while you're doing that, on my Libby app, I have the Wisconsin Public Library Consortium as my where I'm searching for my books. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So Wisconsin Public Library Consortium, or WPLC, is the state entity, and so you start with selecting like Wisconsin Public Library Consortium and then Kenosha County Library System. Fun note, our Overdrive access is actually through the county library system rather than the city library system.
So should I be adding more libraries to my search or just the one that I have?
So there's 2 levels. So when you're searching, are you talking when you're searching for a book
Well, just
or like the
yes.
login process?
So I just have this one Wisconsin Public Library Consortium.
Mhm.
I thought that was like getting the widest search.
Yes. Yep.
And that's all I have is that one, but you can add other libraries.
Correct. So some libraries let anyone have like a digital library card. So in theory, you can add more libraries in your Libby app, and when you do that, when you search, it'll actually automatically search through the access of all of those libraries. So like if you have, say you know someone who has a library card and doesn't use Overdrive at all, in theory, if you got their library card and PIN and they just let you use Overdrive, it would give you 2 points of access from potentially 2 different libraries.
So if you knew someone in Illinois, you could.
Yes. So in theory, yes. If you do that, so my caveat, just because I work here, please don't do that with a Wisconsin library because that is all, yeah, don't do it with a Wisconsin library where they're actually trying to crack down on that. But go, if you have a friend in another state, feel free, but just not Wisconsin. And I would recommend if it's in the state, another state, or actually no, if it's another state, I don't care. So, so in theory, yes, you can do that, and it won't stop you. So I have put together my ideal cart thing. So March was the month I was testing this with, and then I was asked to do a follow-up for April, which is a whole nother mess of work that I had to figure out how to do. So, again, reminder, I have $2,500 is the money we're working with. For a 10-to-1 ratio for just March, for everything, that would be $4,342.21 if we wanted a 10-to-1 ratio for all the holds that we have in Overdrive. Now, I mentioned 5-to-1 is what we do for the physical books. Any predictions on what that'll be? Anyone want to guess?
For the physical books?
for ebooks, for 5-to-1 ratio for ebook holds for March. Just throw out a number. Anybody? 10,000?
20,000.
Higher? Keep going.
43,500.
All right, you can go lower. All right, it's $32,032 for a 5-to-1 ratio for all of the items. That would like fix the holds for that month. So my boss, bless his heart, he just had a child. I told him this number, and I think he was about to cry, because that's a ridiculous amount of money that we can't just go to the city and be like, so can we have more to do that? So he asked me to do it, so say we did that. What happens if we bought those books and then April comes, what would it look like? Which makes sense as someone you want to be smart with your money. Would that be effective is kind of what the question he's asking me. And so luckily I figured that out. And well, the 5-to-1 ratio, April, assuming we spent $32,000 for March, would be $10,283.70. So it does help the problem, but it doesn't solve the problem. Yes.
Your marketing, though, your advertisement for these books is a problem. They're too aggressive. If they would be less aggressive, you'd have no problem.
It's interesting. So on that point, there are like two different sides of that. Because Overdrive themselves have also been doing a lot of marketing lately, especially as they transferred to the Libby app, which I promised I'd talk about. We, as a library, we don't want to like hide books from folks. We want to always encourage you to use them. That's what we're here for. We're here to get books to you, hopefully in the preferred format. So it is an issue. You're right, this is an issue. Demand has increased since 2020 for ebooks every single year across the country as a whole. Like that's not just a local issue. And libraries' missions, getting info and books to you, is like counterintuitive to the pricing that we're dealing with. So it's a conundrum of, well, we want you to use books and get books. It is prohibitively expensive. So what do we do? Right now, we're just informing people how it works, is kind of what we're doing. Because I want you to use these. As a librarian, I want you to get the books. I want you to put Demon Copperhead audiobook on hold and tell me you're interested and get copies. None of us are going to tell you not to do that. This is just one of those kind of areas that's a struggle because it would be a conflict of our mission and goals to try to hide the books from you or hide this option from you, if that makes sense. I'm gonna end it there because we're already 5 over, and I tried to promise you all. If you want to stick around while I'm taking down, I'll talk about Amazon and. Now we kind of understand the licensing part, you can talk about Amazon changes and Overdrive and putting books on different MP3 files. But that'll be it for the presentation. Thank you. That was a lot off my chest. So yeah, thank you for coming. I really appreciate